Hello and welcome to the Transfers podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com, a new podcast where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Duncan Castles and I'm joined this week by one of Spanish football's most well-known faces. Journalist for titles far too numerous to mention here, multinational and multimedia broadcaster, award-winning author of books on Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Mauricio Pochettino and more. Welcome to the Transfers podcast, Guillem Balague.
Hello, Duncan. What a presentation. Thank you.
Great to have you on the podcast. In the middle of your coverage of the European Championship, you're on the way to Stuttgart tomorrow for the quarter-final that could have been the final between Spain and Germany. We're going to talk more about that later in the podcast and a lot of topics, of the biggest topics in Spanish football. But let's start with a quick news story about a player who, in terms of guaranteed transfer fees, remains the most expensive footballer ever signed by a Spanish club. And I think the most expensive currently at a Spanish club, and that's Joao Felix. Played the last season at Barcelona on loan, a club that he had wanted to play for, I think, most of his life. Took him a long time to get there. 10 goals in 39 Liga and Champions League games with Barcelona. Would like to stay at Barcelona, has been trying to stay at Barcelona, but seems to have come to the conclusion that is going to be impossible because Barcelona simply can't afford to get the money together to even register players at present. He is, I'm informed, seriously considering a proposal to move back to the club where he announced himself on the stage of European football, which is Benfica. Benfica, I'm reliably informed, have been exploring this for over a month now, and they have proposed a deal to Atletico Madrid, the club which still owns his transfer rights, in which the Portuguese side will pay 32.5 million euros for 50% of Felix's future transfer rights. So he would move on a full transfer, but were he to move on from Benfica in future windows, Atletico would be entitled to 50% of the return from the next transfer. That could change, however, because another detail in the transaction is that according to performance at Benfica, Benfica will gradually buy a higher percentage of the transfer rights from Atletico during the course of the deal. I mentioned that record transfer fee. He moved to Atletico in 2019 for 126 million euros, guaranteed 7-year contract. His relationship with the club started to deteriorate in 2021. Problems primarily with the coach Diego Simeone. And in fact, only in his first season at Atletico did he play over 50% of LaLiga minutes, which is remarkable for a player who was signed with that level of expectation and at that cost. Guillem, tell us about Felix's time in Spain and whether this seems like a sensible conclusion to it from Atletico Madrid's perspective.
It seems like the only conclusion possible. I don't think there's got many other alternatives, certainly not any other that will attract Atletico Madrid. As you say, Barcelona would like to keep him on loan in a favorable deal that Atletico Madrid are not considering. Benfica seems the only option for everyone. But his time has been one of highs that are magnificent, but simply not often enough. He's a player that doesn't seem to have the mentality required to be uncomfortable continuously, which is the thing that takes you to your best version. He just prefers to play where he feels comfortable. He likes to do the things that make him look good. He doesn't go the extra mile. He just doesn't. And that was identified very quickly by Simeone. There was an incident after a few good performances when he first arrived. There was an incident, I think it was against Villarreal, in which he rejected the instructions of Simeone that wanted him to move out of position to play somewhere else, and he kind of rebelled against it. Well, that was the beginning of the end, and the relationship had just started, really. he is not consistent enough, doesn't score enough, doesn't assist enough, doesn't impact in games enough. I mean, the confirmation of that is that he goes to Barcelona, a Barcelona that struggles to reach the target and in fact end up winning nothing. And he became a substitute. And he didn't rebel against that either. He wasn't the kind of player that when he came on, things happened. So even though, because of the relationship of Joan Laporta with his agents, they've been flirting with the idea of keeping him, especially if he fits the financial fair play. If it was a loan deal, if Atletico Madrid still paid some of his wages, etc. Barcelona may have considered it, but they're not going to pay any money to keep him, not at all. Because of that, the Joao Felix has never been the player, never ever has been the player that he could have been.
Yeah, it was an interesting transfer in the first place because Atletico went and paid the €120 million buyout plus 6 million, which was to do with the way in which they transacted the deal. The payments all didn't come in one go. He was wanted by Manchester City at the time. He had a lot of options elsewhere. I'm told that during the time he's been at Atletico, they've turned down substantial offers from Manchester United, Bayern Munich, a big offer from Barcelona in January 2022, which would have been for €70 million for 50% of the transfer rights at that stage. Chelsea were offering 80 million at the time when the new American owners had come in, and he went on loan there in January 2023 before Lampard decided he didn't like him. It seems like he made a bad decision in choosing that match with Simeone and has set his career backwards as a result of it. Although, as you say, he's had his opportunities at Barcelona and ended up as a bench player there.
Yeah, I don't think it matches Simeone and Joao Felix. And perhaps the idea of Atletico Madrid was certainly to buy him for a price that with good performances will seem cheap. This was at a time where 120 odd million was considered where the market was going. And then COVID hit and things changed completely, in which case Atletico Madrid have never been able to find a deal good enough that the money that they put in, perhaps with the exception of the deal that you mentioned of Barcelona in January. But I think at that point, Atletico Madrid wanted Simeone to play a different brand of football, wanted the club that was going into a new stadium to attract the fans in a different way. And that dichotomy, that two-way of thinking about how to play has been won by Simeone. And basically the club now will do whatever Simeone wants, including get rid of Joao Felix. He doesn't want him back. Joao Felix doesn't want to go back to Atletico Madrid either. So it's just a matter of time where he goes. And Benfica, even though I'm also hearing that he will wait perhaps a little bit longer to see if anybody else approaches him, and that going back to Portugal, it may seem like a step back. Yeah, in fact, it actually could be a place where he can recover some of his confidence, project some of his talent, and maybe, with the lessons of the last few years, find some kind of consistency.
Yeah, he's still just 24. I think you're right to say that he will take his time to decide on this. The information I have is that Benfica are increasingly confident that they can get the deal through. The structure of it is in a way that Atletico Madrid get the amortised residual on the transfer fee back to them. That's where the 32.5 million comes from. And it has been suggested to me that there is one possible out for him in the Premier League. One that I think you'll be interested to comment on, Guillem, which is Aston Villa. With Unai Emery as coach, I'm told that there is a good regard between Felix and Unai Emery, and that if Aston Villa can get themselves in a position, they've done a lot of work in the last month to sort out their financial issues, they could be a competitor here for Benfica, and that may be a more attractive move to Felix.
And that would be interesting if Aston Villa, that, as you say, have had to adjust their finances to make sure that they don't get punished, if they actually find that kind of money available, and if they will put it into one player. They're losing players, or they have lost players, because of their necessity to sell. So I think they need players in different positions if they want to do a very good European campaign and to continue pushing for the top four. So it sounds like a bit of a risk to put so much into, into just one player. But one thing that Aston Villa, I think, will appreciate is it's even more quality in the last third for Ollie Watkins to take advantage of. They've got one or two good wingers, they've got good midfielders, but perhaps that player that takes them to the next level is something that it sounds like they're looking for.
Yeah, they've already spent 37.5 on Ian Maatsen from Chelsea. I think the advantage that Felix has here is because Benfica and Atletico have come up with a structure, and where it's 32.5 million initially, it puts it in the range of being an accessible transfer for Premier League clubs, even ones who have to be a little bit more careful about their finances, like Aston Villa. Let's move on to the Spanish national team. The glory of the Spanish national team, who've won every game so far in the Euros, conceded just one goal, showed the resilience by coming back from a goal down against the super organised Georgia to win 4-1 in their round of 16 match. This is a Spanish team, Guillem, that 16 months ago was losing 2-0 to Scotland, and not that long after almost went a goal down at home to Scotland, benefited from what I would certainly consider some very generous refereeing. They now look like probably the best team in the Euros, certainly one of the favourites if they can get through this game against the host Germany. Where has that change in Spain's performance come from?
It's been a process. Quite clearly, what Luis Enrique was trying didn't work. In Qatar, it was a one-dimensional team. I don't know why he insisted on it, because he's able to play in different ways, but he did. And what we saw was a team that, against Morocco, in the knockout stages, unable to shoot often enough, and unable to create often enough, and unable to take advantage of the talent, the individual talent that they had. It just didn't happen. So then the federation decided that they wanted a manager that knew the players that were coming through. Because the Spanish Federation has been run like a football club, it makes sense to promote Luis de la Fuente from the younger sides. He, of course, was the European champions under 19 and under 21 and silver medalist in Tokyo. And he's had in his hands players that are now regulars, like Unai Simon and Cucurella and Fabian Ruiz, Mikel Merino, so many. So he knew what they could do, and he also represented a, I don't know, evolution or change from the style. He's happy to control the games when that's what the game requires, but he appreciates something that I think every team has got from Pep Guardiola down, which is space in the transition. So why abandon that idea if you have the likes of, now clearly, Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams? But like with every team, there was a moment where it had to click, and that happened against Georgia in Tbilisi. The federation had forgotten to bring the boots of the players, so the night before they didn't know how they were going to play. If they had to go the next morning and go and buy them in a shop in Tbilisi. Eventually the boots arrived, but that evening, with the laughs of people walking around with sandals and the connection of the new generation with the not so old generation, everybody says that day was one which could be described as a family encounter. There was a family feeling. There was a change of atmosphere already. Then, in the game next day, with the boots on, not only Spain scored 7 goals, something else happened. And this is the magic of football. You can never predict that. The wingers that started were Dani Olmo, who is one of the favourites of Luis de la Fuente, in whatever position he plays, and Marco Asensio, the Real Madrid player at the time. And, was at PSG already. And they got injured before halftime, both of them. And they were replaced by Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal, and both of them scored. So from that moment on, Luis de la Fuente thought, this guy is 16 in Lamine, but he can play. And Nico, wow, he adds a lot of pace. And both of them work really hard without the ball. So they very versatile, they follow instructions, they have the right personality, and that was it. We took off from then. The qualifiers then became easier than it seemed after having been defeated by Scotland. And quite clearly, they've all reached alongside with the best holding midfielder in the world, with a Fabian Ruiz that looks amazing, both recovering possession, but also in the way he shoots more than anybody else, how he assists, he scored a couple of goals. with Pedri, who had a couple of very good games, maybe not so much the Georgia game, but then Dani Olmo comes in and adds in. So the centre-backs linking very well. The perfect combination is for De La Fuente is Lenormand and Laporte, with the full-backs that help the wingers, both defending and in offensive moves. The whole thing just worked to a level that nobody expected. The expectations were very low, in fact. And all of a sudden, yes, there is enough evidence that we are the best team in the competition, create more chances than anybody, score more than anybody, conceded only one goal. We've got the player, Lamine Yamal, that creates the biggest amount of chances. I don't know, it just looks really good. But against Germany, a team that plays very similar as well, building from the back, attacking in numbers, but counter-attacking when they need to. It would just be a matter of details. It'll be technically amazing, because I think you get the best players in terms of what they can do with the ball in the same pitch. Tactically will be very interesting how both teams adapt to what happens. But yeah, probably the win of that one could even end up winning the whole tournament.
What's your biggest concern for the game? You clearly have two very young, very confident wingers who have been stars of the tournament. Is there any sense of concern that they could get carried away with how well things have gone for them and have a difficult match against Germany? Or is there other areas that you think are more problematic or potentially problematic for Spain?
They're still 21 and 16, able to just go for it and not fear the consequences. And they will be given the opportunity to do that. But of course, they all know they are dangerous. They got to be clever in one they go for the dribbling, one they go for the passing. I think Laporte is better. Lamine is better than Nico Williams at that. Nico just goes. He's one of the fastest players in the whole tournament. Lamine runs with his head up, and sometimes, no, generally he chooses very well. Sometimes he goes, sometimes he passes, sometimes he shoots. So not a worry. That is one of the threats of Spain. Let's see if it's Morata as the typical number 9. But I feel that the likes of Rudiger and whoever else plays alongside Rudiger will be happy to have a centre forward like that. Or if they go for Dani Olmo, a false 9 that is now hit form again after his injury, and could create a different kind of danger and a new weapon as well if counter-attacking becomes a regular feature. So no problems there in midfield. If Fabian or Pedri don't do well, there is alternatives. Of course, we have been able to do that pressure high constant and intensively, which means that we've hardly been shot at. And it is interesting how the perception of when we get attacked, because there's so much space in behind the centre-backs, it feels like really like threatening and dangerous. But really, not much danger has been created against us. And the goal of Georgia was an own goal. So if you deal with that mentally, with that threat of the fear of threat, if you like, and especially the fullbacks as well have to track back too, Germany will have the counter-attacking options, and they will be the best at it of the teams that we faced. So that's the danger, how we deal with stopping those counter-attacks. And we are the team that has done the biggest amount of tactical fouls in the whole tournament. No surprise there. But it does also mean that we haven't done well something that we've been exceptional at, which is that pressure high that stops teams building from the back, and Germany needs to do that. Second thing, stop Kroos. The first pass of Kroos, the first move, the first decision of Kroos, which tends to be clever and tends to be a pass to Gundogan, for instance, or Havertz, or Musiala. Stop that, and then you stop Germany in a big way. So it's about if we do what we do with the same quality that we've done it so far, and we are better than Germany. We are better than Germany, and we haven't been beaten by Germany since 1988, which I'm from the old generation that thinks that Spain is not very good, and we've just been lucky at winning 2 European Championships, one World Cup, but at some point it's going to go bad again. Because I've been through the bad period. And in that bad period, before we won everything, Germany was the reference of everything. Beating them will be the biggest thing. And of course, we go and beat them in the final of the European Championships in 2008 and the semi-finals of the World Cup in 2010. So the new generations are not scared of Germany. I still got that cautiousness of, but it is Germany. But it's true that they haven't beat us in an international tournament since 1988.
That's a remarkable statistic. And another remarkable statistic, which I saw in one of your articles this week, was on Nico Williams, one of those two young wingers, which it helps with that high press that you're talking about. The quality of Spain's press is having such young, energetic players in the front line. You pointed out that he is the only player on record to start a European Championship match and score a goal, assist a goal, and complete 100% of his passes as a winger. That is absolutely remarkable. He has been seen as a remarkable player by other clubs. He's at Athletic Bilbao. He has what appears to be a very accessible release clause of around 60 million euros. He fits positions that clubs like Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle United, Paris Saint-Germain want to recruit in. Just 21 years of age, as you say. That looks like it should be a straightforward transfer. However, he's at Athletic Bilbao and that complicates matters. Do you actually see Williams moving to one of his suitors, which also include Barcelona this summer?
Let's say first that in modern football, where 1v1s are becoming so important and so regular, with that pressure high, you have to look after the man that you put pressure on there. And for that man, be it a defender or whatever, to beat you, it's becoming a more regular feature. And of course, you also create the conditions when you attack most teams to allow the wingers to attack 1v1 with the defenders. And to beat that is the hardest thing in football. And Nico does it regularly. He does it while choosing very well as well his passes and being accurate. He needs to score more, there's no doubt about that. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but he's about to be 22, so he's only young. He has learned a lot from Iñaki Williams, his brother, who still plays, of course, for Athletic Club. And that has to do with both life and he's a hard worker, willing to learn. So you've got a diamond there. And he's not a rough diamond, he's almost the complete picture. Then you'd say 58 million will take him away and Athletic Club will not negotiate anything else. Barcelona are interested, as you say, others in the Premier League. It's just a matter of paying that money, isn't it? But Athletic Club is a different brand, a different way of being a football club. All the players are from the lower ranks. All the players are Basques. With the appearance of Iñaki Williams in the team, that's opened up as well the eyes to emigrants in the area, and the possibility of making it into the first team is a dream that can come true. So Iñaki opened the doors and others have followed, especially Nico as well. He's the tax situation, in which I think they pay only 25% tax, which is much lower than anywhere else, makes whatever contract Athletic Club puts on the table very interesting. And there is a sense that Athletic Club does a lot for you, so you owe the club. And Nico's still, I feel, in that position. I don't think he's in a rush to leave. He's just got a new contract a few months back. He feels he wants to play with his brother a little bit longer, be seen by his mother and dad, who of course went through so much to allow them to fulfill the dreams of Iñaki and Nico. And once that goes, when he feels that he's paid Athletic Club back, then he'll go. I'm convinced about that. Iñaki Williams has always toyed with the idea of leaving, but now I think he's 30. He feels that it's his club and will continue at Athletic Club. He's playing the best football of his career, and Ernesto Valverde, who of course will stay at least one more season. And Nico, yeah, he thinks a little bit different. He will pay back Athletic Club and then he will go, but I don't think he will be this summer.
So it will be down to Nico Williams and it will be done on Athletic Club's terms when this transfer happens.
Yeah, you have to pay 58 million. That's it. They will not negotiate anything else. And Barcelona has tried. They already made one offer, and Athletic Club said, "Buy your clause. That's all you need to pay." But at the club, they're confident that he's not ready to go yet, that he has to improve, that he can do it at Athletic Club, and that when he's a more formed player, give him another year, make him double figures scoring and assisting, and then 58 already sounds cheap, but it will sound even cheaper in a year's time. And then yes, then maybe he'll have time to prepare himself to move. I think a lot is happening to him, a lot of attention, a lot of interest, a lot to deal with. And I think he probably feels still better protected back home with Iñaki, with the club, and then 1 year to realize what's the best for him. If Barcelona come and decide to put together Lamine and Nico, what a proposition that would be. And that will take away a little bit of how can I put it, Real Madrid brings Mbappe in and they've got Vinicius. But if Barcelona have got Nico and Lamine together, wow, all of a sudden we'll see the results, but the interest, the brand will just jump in terms of interest. And I think that's why Barcelona are trying to do it, but they just simply don't have the money to do it this summer, I don't think.
And Lamine has been talking about hoping that Nico can come to join him in Barcelona. You also talked in your article about how Spain were clever in fostering a relationship between Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal, and Williams has played a role in integrating Lamine into the Spain national team and built that success there. When you say they have to pay the release clause, it's pay the release clause and pay the release clause in full. There's no negotiation from Athletic's parties.
The only negotiation is that, if I'm not mistaken, the Spanish club, if they want to buy somebody and they have to pay the buyout clause, there is an extra, it's called IRPF tax, which tends to be forgiven by Athletic club. So you pay 58 and that's fine. That is a way of negotiating, but of course, 58 is what they probably feel now, that is a low buyout clause anyway, but they feel that with that, they can continue their path of bringing those Basque players that perhaps are not now in the Basque country, they are somewhere else, but bring them back. That cost, that is a transfer cost to it. Improve the conditions of the academy, which is the real quarry of talent, and yeah, allow them to continue doing what they're doing, which is in the last year challenging for the Champions League. They ended up in the Europa League, but they would like, if possible, to go a little bit further, still with their philosophy of Basque players, and that sometimes needs a bit of money. They don't need to sell, though. They don't need to sell. They are in a very good place, and getting 58 million will give them room for maneuver for some of those players that they need to pay for.
Athletic won the Copa del Rey with Nico as the man of match in that game. They have a very defined strategy, which is in contrast to the club Barcelona, who are trying to secure Nico and put him beside Lamine as a superstar in their team. I think Barcelona in recent years, they've almost become the definition of a dysfunctional football club. 9 years without a Champions League. They are in severe financial difficulties in that we know in Spain, each club has a spending cap in which they're allowed to use for player salaries and for player transfers, amortised players' transfers. They went from having 648 million in the 2022-23 season to 270 million for the past season, with that being further reduced to 204 million after one of Joan Laporta's grand plans to sell forward future revenue through a Barca media company that they wanted to float on the NASDAQ for $1 billion. After that plan fell through, they have, I believe, €100 million hole in their accounts from last season, which they have to find the money to fill before they're allowed to even register players they've already signed, such as Vitor Roque, never mind bring new players in, such as Nico Williams. Why has it gone so spectacularly wrong for Barcelona, Guillem?
If you talk to Laporta, he says two things, that it's all they mortgaged by what happened in the previous regime, but now it's going to be 4 years since being in charge, so I think that excuse started to sound a little bit thin. And two, he would say that they are in a good place. We still don't know, even though the accounts have been closed, we still don't know if they will be able to return to the one-to-one financial fair play rule this summer, which means that they can spend every euro that they generate through sales or sponsors deals, and it will allow them to save from their wage budget or to bring new signings. That 1v1 rule is obviously what healthy clubs have got, and that Barcelona don't have yet. We just don't know if that's going to be possible. The federation the league were quite positive. So have been Barcelona, but Barcelona, they're always optimistic, far too optimistic for the situation, because there still is a massive amount of debt. some of which will be paid or can be paid quicker once the stadium is finished at the end of this year. But some of it will still remain. And in total is over 2 billion euros debt. As I said, in different types of debt, but still, that hamstrung any club in the world. But it's true that 3-4 years ago, they were on the verge of almost bankruptcy. So, yes, the patient perhaps still in ER, but is conscious. I think that's what probably Barcelona would like to describe it as. And why they haven't been able to come out of it quicker, of the ER, Victor Font, one of the candidates to the election, finished second to Laporta and will be a candidate again. He keeps saying that there hasn't been creative measures being taken that would have allowed, for instance, to keep Messi and to use his brand to bring more money, or they selling parts of the club, the famous levers, with not enough return, with a policy that seems to be thinking of today and not tomorrow, with partners, some of them that have not paid. So there is a lot of improvisation, a lot of wrong decisions, and it's all down to the fact that Laporta surrounded himself not with the best professionals. He did during the election campaign. They've all left. Most of them have left since. And most of them because they feel that Laporta does his own thing and brings his own family and friends to take over the club. And that's definitely not a way to take Barcelona out of where they are now fast enough. Laporta will tell you a completely different picture, a completely different story. So it's up to you who you want to believe. But I feel that Barcelona, under different hands, would have been in a better place. And Laporta doesn't seem to have all the answers to get Barcelona out of the mess they're in.
I think if you simply look at their dealings in the transfer market and their squad construction, which of course is fundamental to any club's success, you see again and again they sign players at high prices or on high salaries who frequently fail, or they're trying to move on again rapidly after signing them, or they can't even bring into the team, such as Vitor Roque. You have Frankie de Jong, who is an old regime signing, but who they've been trying to shift out for years now, and they're trying to shift out again. You have Jules Koundé, available for sale, who was a premium signing of the Laporte era. You have Rafinha, who, if you listen to Julio Gomez Filho on one of our earlier podcasts, he thinks Rafinha was one of the most consistent performers for Barcelona. Again, an expensive acquisition, but also now available for sale. You have Robert Lewandowski on a salary which I believe will go over 30 million euros for the coming season at 35 years of age. The structure and the building of the fundamentals of the team just seems to have too many mistakes in it.
Yeah, but everyone has got his own explanation. Rafinha was bought with the idea of perhaps selling him later on as they saw the potential there, and there was a close relationship between the agent and Laporta. Lewandowski, also represented by Pini Zahavi, close to Laporta, bringing him was a way of saying, look, we still can get big guys, and can other big guys want to come? Or Bernardo Silva, would you like to join us? And Bernardo has been saying yes until realizing that financially Barcelona couldn't do it, and also that the squad, as you said, is very unbalanced. And I'm not sure how now they're going to balance it. They're going to have to sell. If they really believe that Nico's the solution and want to find 58 million, they're going to have to sell, I don't know, Araujo, for instance. So one of the best performers again, and Rafinha too. So then you get one good player, but you lose two, and that's how it goes. That's why I've always felt that there was another way for Barcelona, which was somebody of authority and trusted by the fans, say Laporta or Victor Font, had enough votes as well to be able to send this message if he had become president, which was, guys, we're just not in a good place. And it's going to take a while for us to catch the likes of Real Madrid. We'll try to compete, but we're going to build a new stadium that will change our situation for good. Let's put all our strength there. And I tell you what, we're just going to get players through the ranks. And we're going to make a team that is youthful, energetic. We're going to bring a manager that can put them, maximize the potential, who's a coach as well as a manager, etc. And let's see how it goes. But instead, they kept talking about, and they do it, Barcelona leaks big names to newspapers, so newspapers can sell newspapers and hope that there's a brighter future. But it's based on nothing. And because they obviously know fans very well, we've got a very short attention span and very short memories. You just say that you won and you believe it for a week, and then it disappears from the news, goes to Real Madrid, you just put your focus on somebody else, and that's how it goes. That's the media circus and cycle goes in Barcelona. Nobody takes the story seriously, but it excites people for a little bit, and then you move on. Now it was like Kimmich is the latest one. Kimmich wants to come to Barcelona. Barcelona can't pay for Kimmich. Oh, Kimmich is not coming. Oh, never mind. And so on and so forth. Instead of having a clear sporting path, that's really the lack of support from the club, but also the lack of path, is what made Xavi abandon the club at first. Then he got a little bit scared and he wanted to be still part of a club that perhaps was able to still compete as they showed in the last couple of months of the season, and change his mind. But originally it was because there's no trust in the board and there is no sporting path, really, no clear one.
It's a club that seems to constantly play to the crowd. It's about image, decisions, appealing to the fans, being seen to compete without having that defined strategy, as you detail there. The contrast with Real Madrid is huge, is it not? Real Madrid have taken that position of power in European football, which I think it's fair to say was equivalent to Barcelona's, and turned themselves into the dominant force in Spain in terms of what they can spend on players, but also the dominant force in European football. Just completed their 15th European Cup, their 6th Champions League win of the last 11, win LaLiga by 10 points. And it's built around this recruitment strategy where they use their status as the storied club of European football and their geographical position, a country that players want to live in, to attract an array, a run of the top young talented players in European football. I was looking at their squad this morning, and you have Aurelien Tchouameni, 24 years of age, Vinicius Jr., one of the top strikers in Europe, who's just about to have Kylian Mbappe playing alongside him, 23 years of age, Rodrigo, 23, Jude Bellingham, 21, Eduardo Camavinga, 21, Endrick just arriving from Brazil, Arda Güler, who has been one of the most appealing figures in this European Championship, signed last summer for Fenerbahce, who only played 4 La Liga starts for Madrid last season. They're lining up Lenny Yoro from Lille, who again, all or the majority of the top European clubs want to sign this young centre-back. And it seems Yoro has already decided Madrid's the one I want to go to. Therefore, Madrid are able to negotiate the 60 million euros asking price down. They have been incredibly intelligent in the way they've built this project in a way that's unexpected if you look back at the history of Real Madrid.
Yeah, they have a clear strategy. That is so important, and not many people putting it in practice. And that seems to work in football. It's hard to get, unless success comes, it's hard to continue one path. But Real Madrid have done it even in times of difficulties. Quite clearly, Florentino Perez has adapted well to what's been coming to football. He was lucky with COVID to be able to rebuild the Santiago Bernabéu at a time where there were no fans. That was a little bit of luck, but already was ahead of Barcelona, for instance, in doing that, in bringing a new home to their fans. And yeah, realizing that they couldn't compete with the club state, as they call them, then just went to South America and pushed everybody away with their offers for the likes of Vinicius. Barcelona were negotiating with Vinicius, for Rodrigo, for Endrick, etc. Paid more than anybody else because that's the way of getting the superstars before they actually become superstars. And then if they go through the filters that you need to go to succeed at Real Madrid, you have a competitive player and you have a good player. And if they don't, they have been Real Madrid players, they will get the money back. somewhere. So it works really well. And Florentino Perez couldn't have calculated that he was going to win, 6 out of the last 10 Champions Leagues or whatever it is. Just, that's crazy. That you cannot plan for that. But what you can plan is to have a team that is full of winners and competitors and that have got quality, and that they know that if it's not going one way, or if you lose Cristiano Ronaldo, Sergio Ramos, that the ones there will actually raise their level because they are competitive and they are good. And then just bring 2 or 3 pieces that makes the team more solid or makes the team more offensive or whatever it is that is needed. Plus, he's found in Ancelotti and Zidane, the 2 perfect managers for that kind of thinking. If the one in charge is Florentino, you need a manager that understands that. If the players have got enough chinks in their armor, enough answers in their brains, then the manager doesn't need to be too much of a coach. Just needs to organize the team a little bit. That balance has been found and success has arrived. And they're well ahead from Barcelona. They're 20 years ahead of Barcelona. So even though, depending how it goes, sometimes they will lose some leagues, of course. I think we've started a Real Madrid era in Spain with, as you said, players that are young, with a lot of experience already, international experience, the Camavinga, the Tchouaménis, the Mendy's, Rudiger, Milik. This team can go on for another 4 or 5 years, no problem, especially now with a forward line that is the envy of the whole world.
And how will that forward line work? Because there are people questioning whether bringing Kylian Mbappe in and placing him in the same area of the pitch that Vinicius Jr. prefers to play could actually cause some problems for the team, could actually be to the detriment of Madrid rather than allowing them to continue on this path that they picked for themselves and followed so effectively.
But we have to stop thinking one is a winger, the other one is a number 9. How about if sometimes Vinicius attacks the wing and Benzema comes inside? Other times Benzema goes right, Rodrigo comes inside and Vinicius attacks the wing. Other times Benzema attacks the wing. It's going to be like that. So the important thing...
The way Mbappe will play, you see as being similar to the way that Benzema and Vinicius combined so effectively for Madrid.
To be honest, now Vinicius plays inside as well a lot and gets into the box, and he's been a goal scorer of one-touch football, so the one who finishes actions. And once he gets into the box, he finishes them anyway if he drives with the ball. So you are talking about somebody that is getting more layers. And the key here is not the tactics, because you've got Endrick, you've got Rodrigo, you've got Arda Güler, you've got Mbappe, Vinicius. The important thing here is that they get on. If they get on, if they understand each other, if they're generous to each other, don't worry, it'll be fine. There's no Cristiano Ronaldo to demand the ball all the time. These are guys, you'd hope, because Mbappe is perhaps the only doubt, that understand that they are Real Madrid, which are bigger than them. End of. And then with Ancelotti adjusting matters, he will have to take decisions. He's already left Modric on the bench and Kroos on the bench, but Kroos rebelled and became very important. He will have his ideas of how it's all going to work. We'll give everybody an option. Of course, Endrick and Arda Güler are getting all nervous, and Rodrigo, because they think, where are we going to play? Are we going to play enough? But who doesn't want to be there, really? It'd be, if you give the chance and you are good enough, I think Ancelotti will give you a chance. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see it all happen, because it won't happen easily, because Mbappe is going to have to reduce his area of influence. It's in France, for instance, they ask him to do that, but it's not fully working. Doesn't seem to have the harmony that's necessary. He still thinks he's got to do everything. At Real Madrid, he won't need to. And he'll have to adapt to that, because he comes from a club that named him an official director of football and took big decisions. So to go from that to just be the guy that needs to score the goals, it requires an adjustment. But I think he's had time to think about all that and to start creating and effectively develop, once he gets there, a new mind frame.
Let's talk about another club in Spain who've had a very effective plan and hugely outperformed, which is Girona, a club from a Catalonian city with a population of just 100,000, a 15,000 seat stadium, who are now in the Champions League, who led LaLiga at the halfway point, and ended up finishing third, just 4 points behind Barcelona, which was not just their highest ever finish. They'd never finished higher than 10th before. It was only their 4th ever season in La Liga's top tier. We know that there's been huge influence there from City Football Group, who own 47% of the shares in Girona. But it has to be more than just the help of the Abu Dhabi nation state. How did they manage to achieve this, Guillem?
They've been clever in the market. And you were saying that Real Madrid attracts people because of the geographics and also because of the history. Girona have been saying, we belong to the City Group. You do well for us. You may end up at Manchester City, for instance.
Yeah.
And that's how some of the deals have been structured in a way that have to do with performances for now and the future, and has meant a small transfer fee because, of course, financial fair play wouldn't allow them to spend more. And from the City Group itself, they only got 2 players, Fran Couto and Jan Couto and Silvinho. The rest have been either players that have been in the City Group, like Alex Garcia, who they had very, very good reports on and seemed a little bit lost, but he's recovered his path. And others like Dobrik or Tasinkov that they research themselves. So within their means, with a manager that they backed up from the beginning, with an idea that is defended and understood by everyone there, and that is the hardest thing again, to be able for everyone to think the same way, from the manager to Quique Cárcel, the director of football. When you get all that, you normally get success. Now, to get the kind of success they had this season, everybody's got to be at their best. Miguel Gutiérrez, the fullback who probably will go back to Real Madrid, was outstanding. Everybody just had a magnificent season. So it's clever functioning in the market. It's good coaching from Michel, who's a top manager. He's got a touch of Pep Guardiola about him, not so much the vision of a new football, but the insisting on the idea and the correction. He is the biggest corrector you would have. And in the first division, that doesn't happen that often. And when it happens, when you are being corrected constantly during the games, in training, in between trainings and games, you are eventually, if it's proposed in a charming way, as Mitchell does, you get the best of your version. But again, to be a player and a collective that makes it into the Champions League, the selection of the squad should have been good. So it's the perfect storm. Will it happen again? I doubt it. I think the likes of Villarreal are getting it right. Athletic Club are getting closer. Obviously, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona and Real Madrid are ahead. There are Real Sociedad, without having the top European competition to deal with, will also challenge. It'd be difficult for Girona to do it again. But yeah, miracles happen because they're not really miracles.
You mentioned Mikel's similarities to Pep Guardiola. Is he now a strong candidate to replace Guardiola when he eventually decides to leave Manchester City?
I'm not sure. He doesn't have the English that's required.
Okay.
I don't think so. I thought he would have been a good replacement for Xavi, but for whatever reason, Laporta had in his head that he had to be the German way, and Hansi Flick has been chosen, which, funnily enough, he's got Pini Zahavi as an agent.
How could that have happened? One last question about Girona. Is it good for Spanish football that one of Spain's Champions League club is strongly influenced by one of the biggest clubs in European football, Manchester City? For example, the best player for Girona last season was Savio, who was on loan from Troyes. He's also a City Football Group player and who will now join Manchester City because they decide that they want to enact that transfer, having developed him at Girona. Is this a positive thing for Spanish football and European football that a club that finishes third in one of the top divisions in European football is utilised by another major club for their purposes?
I don't see any problem with it. I see that, as it happens in every industry, there tends to be a leader that proposes a way of doing, and everybody copies it. But imagine if you copy that actually being part of the family. There's so many people that want to, or so many teams that want to do what Manchester City do. There's so many coaches that want to be Pep Guardiola. But at least Michel has got the possibility of sharing time with him and propose a brand of football that has been proven to be successful. And with doing it with Girona in a place where the expectations were low, is a way to experiment and maximize the potential in a different way. That's where football is going anyway. Clubs that have got other clubs linked to, where moves can be done in an easier way, where those moves are done by players that, of course, have learned to do things that can work in the future clubs if it's part of the same family. It makes sense to do it. It makes sense to do it. And if we were still thinking that football is a romantic sport in which your local boys play for your local team and is financed by your local businessman, then no, but that's well gone. We're somewhere else. Capitalism makes richer and the rich ones richer and make being concentrated in smaller hands, in lesser hands. So football is exactly the same. There is clubs that are becoming richer, that have been clever in how they're doing things. I'm not sure how you judge that because it's just how society is going.
Let's talk about a couple of coaches that you know well to finish off the podcast. Julian Lopetegui and Maurizio Pochettino. Lopetegui back in English football, having waited while he had offers and approaches from the Saudi Pro League and elsewhere for the West Ham United job. Signed a 2-year contract with a 1-year option. And saying in his first press conference this week that he has a good platform to work from. How do you see Lopetegui improving on what David Moyes has achieved at West Ham United?
David Moyes has left a good platform of a team that knows how to defend, that have got qualities that make them difficult to beat and competitive as well. They tasted the European football, so they just want to continue there. And Lopetegui will take it to, but definitely use that, and will take it to another level. He'll teach the team the ability to do more things with the ball, to attack in different ways. But his teams tend to be very balanced. So they tend to be the teams that concede the least amount of goals. They're very good in quick transitions. They're very good in pressure and physicality. The foundation is there. And West Ham will become, I think, under Lopetegui, a team that will challenge closer to the top 5, 6. If he's backed up in the transfer market, of course, which by the sounds of it is going to happen. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him. I think his level is that one or even further up. And as nothing came up, if you like, from a Champions League contender, regular contender, then he had to accept this. Not had to. He was happily accepted the possibility of returning to the Premier League, where I feel he was impressed by, in his time at Wolves, by how everything works. He always wanted to come to the Premier League. And now with West Ham, he'll be given the opportunity in a long-term project, I feel, to show his value. There's a lot of myths and fake news coming out of his time at Wolves, of why he left, for instance, or what kind of manager he is. Far too often in England, people make assumptions based on the time of people in England, as if the time before didn't exist or was not important. And they had the impression that he left Wolves because he's that kind of manager that leaves places halfway through a season, or when halfway through a pre-season, fails to identify the real reasons, which is that he was lied at 3 times. And if you at your job get lied at 3 times and the goalpost moves 3 times, you better move, because otherwise, I don't want to put a name to what you are if you continue in the same place and accepting whatever rules they give you. The rules were changed 3 times. So at the end, it was like, sorry, I cannot work with this. Somebody else will be able to, but I cannot work with this, because he worked before the end of the season. He worked on the possibility of buying players between 20, 30 million pounds, which is what the club told him they were going to do. So he started arranging conversations and deals and whatever. And then they said, actually, forget it. You can only bring free players. Oh, okay, so I'm going to have to think about this, because this is not the plan that we had. When I first signed, I was told that you wanted to get closer to European places. Now you say you can only sign free players and we may have to sell players. Not good. But he stayed. And then when he was getting to pre-season, he was like, sorry, forget it. You cannot even get free players. You cannot get anybody. All right, okay. That's what happened. And now the situation is different. There was different conversations had with different managers. The one that the club wanted was Lopetegui. It happened, and yeah, very much looking forward to see what he can do with the team.
And Mauricio Pochettino, perhaps another manager who didn't get exactly what he expected when taking on the job at Chelsea from the owners, and grew increasingly disconcerted with working there. He is on the beach at present. He has so far not taken up interest in him from the Saudi Arabian Pro League. Is there a job waiting for him in England once this European Championship finishes and Gareth Southgate finishes his long-term stay with the national team? And if there is a job for him, is it the perfect marriage?
Well, he did say in the book that we did together that he would love to be England manager. He certainly would like that possibility. Let's see, the federation, I was told when maybe a couple of years ago, that the plan was to bring another English coach. That was the priority. But in Pochettino, you've got somebody that has worked with some of the youngsters, has proposed a brand of football that is attractive, did very well at Spurs, did very well at Chelsea. If you look at how they ended, how the players didn't want him to go, how he was told, sorry, but we move in a different direction, how he would have liked to stay. Anyway, there is enough there to say that he will be a good replacement for Gareth Southgate if, as you say, he eventually leaves. Another matter is if the federation have got different ideas or if the public will accept it. I don't know, because it's such a tribal community, the football community in England, that, as you could see, many Chelsea fans weren't fully happy with him having been at Spurs, and I don't know if that will have an effect, but in any case, he gets my vote as a manager of England, and it will be interesting that an Argentinian does that, an Argentinian that knows England, understands England, and will give a lot of what Gareth Southgate have been given, the positivity, the great atmosphere, all those things that he does. Plus, I think with more experience than Gareth Southgate, he will give the team more layers and the possibility to express themselves and yeah, just go far in international competition. It'll be interesting. Another one that may like to go is Pep Guardiola, I think. But of course, he's got one more year left at Manchester City. I think he goes on a sabbatical after, so it'll be maybe after the World Cup. Who knows? But yeah, if Gareth Southgate goes now, you need somebody to take England to the World Cup.
Let's finish the podcast with a European Championship hero and villain. I'll start with a kind of tongue-in-cheek hero, the crying man of Portugal, Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm going to make him hero of the week. Why, you ask? Because of some really interesting data that came out. He's using a heartbeat monitor during this tournament, one of his many commercial activities. And if this data is accurate, and I presume it is, they showed that after the end of the game, this racing heart rate, I think over about 180 beats per minute at the end of the match. And they show what happened in the 10 minutes during the penalty shootout. And it indicates that he got his heart rate to the lowest level just before he took that second penalty kick, which, if that data is accurate, it's just a remarkable ability to concentrate and calm himself under the utmost pressure. So I'll give him something out of this week because he hasn't had much out of this European Championship so far.
It's a good one, though. Good stat. For the villain for me will be Didier Deschamps. Man, with the quality you've got, the football you're producing is horrendous. If you take the 2 own goals, France is scoring 0.25 goals per game, and they still managed to get to where they are to. But defensively, yes, they're very strong, as they always are. So many players behind the ball. This is the team that receives the biggest, the smallest amount of shots on target and shots, global shots in total. But with the ball, they should be able to do so much more. And they still depend on a movement of quality of Griezmann, of Dembélé, of Barca, of course, of Mbappe. And just simply hasn't happened enough. They can win the tournament like this, but he will always be my villain. Winning for me is not everything. Only one team wins. If they don't win, what are they going to take home? Just a failure that is based on the inability or the lack of desire to maximize the potential of your team.
Yeah, incredible riches that he has to work with, and it's a safety first approach all the time. Never a safety first approach from Guillem Balague. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Guillem, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the European Championship and this season to come.
My pleasure, Duncan, and congratulations on the podcast that is receiving the accolades that it deserves.
Thank you, Guillem. You've been listening to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com. Please subscribe to our feed on your preferred podcast platform, rate us, review us, and tell your friends, and put on automatic downloads so you get the next episode as soon as it comes out. We now have a WhatsApp channel. Search for the Transfers podcast on WhatsApp or follow the link on the show notes. You can follow and message us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at Transfers Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at TransfersCast. Guillem is on Twitter at Guillem Balague. You can follow me at Duncan Castles. Our music and production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production, and we'll be back next week. Stay safe, be well, and thank you as ever for listening.